Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Wine and Tarot. And wow, this is a special night tonight. I'm so excited to have my tarot teacher here. And her name is Katrina Wynne, as you can tell from the title. She has a master's degree in counseling. She's been reading cards. I think since she was 3, we'll have to ask her. But since she was very young, very, very young, she lives in Northern Oregon by the coast. She has so much going on that we're going to talk about. And I just want to bring her on so that you can meet her. So here is Katrina Wynne. Hey, Katrina.
Hi, everybody. Hi.
It's so nice to have you with me. I'm a little nervous, I have to tell you. Because
let's talk about that first. Let's just get it out of the way or go through it. What makes you nervous? What are you nervous about?
Oh, I think it's more excitement than being nervous,
Okay.
We haven't talked in a really long time since I took your class a few years ago.
That was 2016.
What? I thought it was 2016.
That right? It was this time of year, like the March
through May. It was. And do you know, remember how we had tarot partners?
Yes.
Okay.
Study buddies.
Study buddies. And we didn't know each other.
Right.
But my study buddy and I still keep in touch.
You see, that's what I love about this. I mean, people don't, okay, what are we talking about? Hi, I'm Katrina Wynne. I'm right here on the Oregon coast, Central Oregon coast. And first off, really thank you for having me on, because this is so much fun. I really don't get to talk very often about my program or even my reading style. I'm kind of shy in a certain way. But what we're talking about is I actually have an online course here.
You do?
Yeah, professional tarot consulting certificate course, which is, I've expanded it and calling it a 10-week program, even though there's 8 classes. And it's really designed for anybody who is not necessarily a beginner, but, wants to really increase their skills or become more professional, or, put out their shingle and start doing readings with the public. And it very much prepares you. But the way I designed it is very close to when I used to teach it in person. And I really love teaching things in person. And now, of course, I love teaching things with things like, these online formats, because people can ask questions in real time and I can supervise them. In fact, I'll tell you later about this whole supervision group I do once a month. But in the old days, I would meet with people. We'd have a 6-hour workshop on the topic. And then we'd all go through it together. We'd go first through the theory and then through the practice. Because to me, as a person who went through graduate school and also went through a very specialized modality called process work psychology, what I learned in terms of being a counselor, working with the public, but also being a teacher, how important it is for the student to get information and be able to apply that information as soon as possible. So that's why I worked in that study buddy thing, because I did want people to make friends, and I wanted people to have an opportunity to notice how the other person reads. It's like, wow, everybody's kind of different here. Yeah. We're not doing a cookie cutter. Somehow, okay, it's not a cookie cutter, like one size fits all kind of thing.
Right. It was such a great class. I recommend it to anybody. This is not when I took it, I'm sure it's been changed some, but I'm sure this part hasn't changed. It's very intensive. Like, we read a book every week. And
almost every week. There's 8 weeks and there's 6 books, and you can skim them.
Well, okay. No, we read every page.
Yay,
but I want to go back. I want to go back further, because I first came to know about you even before I moved up to the northern part of Pennsylvania. I lived in southern PA for eons, and I had just really come across tarot. And I was looking, I had Rachel Pollack's book, 78 Degrees of Wisdom. And I really wanted, I was reading for friends, but I felt like I studied psychology in school. And so I studied Jung's theory of individuation, and how we want to integrate our shadow self with our the persona that we put outside. And I thought that tarot was such a great way to help people to do that.
Yes.
Enter Amazon, and one day I'm on Amazon, and I was looking for tarot counseling, and up comes this book called Transformative Tarot Counseling: The High Art of Reading Cards. Yes, that one. And I got that book and read it, and I thought, I need to write to this woman. I need to know if she will take on a student, because I'm all about this.
Yeah.
So I waited it was a couple of years. I wrote to you and asked if you took students, and you said, hey, I'm starting this class. And I was in, and I've never looked back. I'm so glad I took it. I need a refresher, but I'm so glad that I took that class. But I want to ask you about your reading, because I know you've been reading like for a long time, since the 70s, right?
Yeah, the 70s. And I wasn't 3-year-old. I was actually a teenager in the 70s. So right now, for instance, in a few weeks, I'll be 65. So I started in my sort of like mid-teens. And I didn't start reading for other people, though. My approach to the tarot in the beginning was very metaphysical, somewhat spiritual, and more introspective. So I actually studied it as a book of wisdom, just like somebody would pick up the Quran, or the Bible, or something. To me, it was beautiful spiritual knowledge that was being brought forward with a visual symbolic language. And for me, I don't know about you, but I think this might be true for a lot of tarot people. We relate to the pictures better than the words, some of us, So I really love the symbolism and understanding symbol language. And that was a real natural for me, because I relate to the world very symbolically, and is also very much a part of my studies with the process work psychology. And of course, with Carl Jung, who was the Swiss analyst who worked with dreaming and the images that would show up in people's dreaming life. And of course, because of my psychology background, eventually I applied more of those dreaming skills and techniques to my way of viewing the cards. And that's why I couldn't really call it tarot reading, because eventually I got invited to start teaching classes when people found out that I knew about tarot. And then they started inviting me to psychic fairs and stuff. And I thought, well, I don't want someone to come to my table and think I'm going to be doing predictions or fortune telling, because they would be disappointed. And so that's when I came up with the idea of calling it tarot counseling. And that was probably back in I think it was like 1992 or 93, something like that. Yeah. And so that's when I started doing it more publicly. Before that, it was really just a solo, beautiful relationship. And now I realize that, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, is my way of describing things. It's like Creator tells me what to do. Creator says, you know what? People are asking for this. This is the direction I want you to go in. I want you to start sharing this with others. I went, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally get it. I read something. I'm reading a really good book right now. And there was a quote in the book. And the quote says that magic lies between what we have and what we need. And it struck me that that is kind of your philosophy as well. And as far as bringing magic into, and magic in empowering us, empowering others to manifest for themselves. And that really struck me, as far as my learning from you, and your style of teaching as well. And you, who influenced you as far as magic goes? It was somebody from the Golden Dawn, was it not?
Right. So I have a whole chapter in here about, and actually you have a recorded online class called Tarot Magic and Change. And it was Israel Rigardi. if that's
Okay.
the way
Yep.
to pronounce his name. And he was the personal secretary for Aleister Crowley. Plus, he was very much involved with the Golden Dawn and wrote a great deal about it. But then he got turned on to Carl Jung. And then from his unique magical perspective with the Golden Dawn, he started seeing this overlap between what Jung was saying in the individuation process that you mentioned and the magical process, and understanding that the magic, now this is where it really, this is where the key difference is between, let's say, high magic and more of a psychological or spiritual magic, is that high magic has a belief that if I change things on the outside, maybe it'll change things on the inside. But what we're doing with the Turo counseling and other spiritual technologies like that is we're saying, wait, actually, change happens from the inside. And when I make that change on the inside, then the world begins to, if not change around me, at least it appears differently, you see. So it's very much about supporting change from the inside out. And that's why I'm not saying there's anything wrong or bad. I've never tried to demonize fortune telling or prediction. But what I do talk about in my book and in my classes is that if we're making predictions and telling people what to do with their lives, basically we're setting up an expectation for them, which energetically they probably will reinforce. And when they reinforce it, yes, indeed, they may get the results that they wanted. But the thing is they didn't actually have an opportunity to empower themselves to continue to transform and align with their more, I'll just say, their more wonderful life, the life that they're really meant to be here. And can I get a little bit more psychological there for a moment to explain this?
Do it. Yes.
So I'm going to really oversimplify it. So imagine that each one of us, we show up on this earthly plane. And for some of us, it's a little bit of a shock, like, whoa, what happened to the unconditional love, and what happened to being cared for and all my needs being met, just really basic things like that. Don't want to trigger anybody, so erase that. But what we do need to learn, I've noticed as a counselor, and like the bread and butter of being a counselor, is how do we start releasing, removing, transforming the old hurts, the old traumas, the old blocks to that natural, loving wonderfulness that flows through us as beings. And so whether it's through counseling, certain types of counseling, certain types of spiritual work, and to me, the Turo is a spiritual technology, which can be used just as effectively as any other spiritual technology for helping that client or the querent, could be the reader reading themselves, move through their own blocks, move through their own shadow, as Jung would call it. So that's my excitement about working with Turo, is using it as a tool for healing, basically healing ourselves from the inside out. Healing meaning being more whole, being in our wholeness and our holisticness, which again is what Jung was talking about in the individuation process. It's like removing the layers of the shadow and the things that were like the clouds, or that kept us from seeing clearly that we truly are just pure love.
Okay, you guys that know me out there. So now you can understand why I just revere this woman and why I took her class and read her book and just absolutely, and I'm I'm sitting here listening to you again and I'm excited, and I'm going to need the link to that class because I'm going to take it.
Jill, I don't know if you know this, but okay, so here we had 2020, and a lot of people were challenged by the COVID stuff. For me, I knew I was going to be staying home, and I just kind of, Creator talks to me sometimes, and I knew I was going to be staying home. And so right in the middle of the winter, somewhere around like December, I wake up one morning and Creator says, I want you to create a level 2 for the professional Tarot consulting course. And I went,
do know that.
Okay.
I do know that, and I'm excited about it. All those links too are down below in the description box, you guys. We have 25 people in chat right now, and everyone's saying hello. So look, guys, tonight I'm going to do just like a blanket hello. I thank you so very much for being here. If you have a question before, Katrina, if you want to put it in capital letters so that I can try to see it, that would be fabulous. And we're gonna keep going. But one thing that we do on Wine and Tarot every week, Katrina, is, you know, we usually have a glass or 3 of wine. And so I know you have a couple of bottles there, but that you're not going to drink, but you're going to show us, because it's only 1 o'clock in the afternoon there.
Well, you know, I have to admit, I'm more of a tea drinker.
I
Got my
know.
little teapot with me, but last year, I think it was, a friend of mine turned me on to these beautiful labels on these bottles. So maybe you already know about this, but Prophecy had come out
Yes.
with
oh, yes, yes, yes. They're wonderful, aren't they?
Aren't they gorgeous? I wish this person would come out with their own tarot deck. And let me see if they have the artist name. Yeah,
I think that they've been asked, Katrina.
They have?
They're beautiful.
Yeah.
They're
anyway,
beautiful.
That's my show and tell.
Okay, so my show and tell is I do have a bottle that it's in my cabinet behind me. It's called Dreaming Tree, and they have and I have the Chardonnay there. And I was going to drink that because I remember the book on lucid dreaming that we read, and I thought, oh, that reminded me of that. But I went
that was
for the
my teacher, Arnold Mindell.
Yes, yes. Okay, that's what I thought. All right. So then, though, I saw this one, and it has an easier open top, and it's called Sea Glass, and it's a Pinot Grigio, which I love. And so I'm going to open up and have a little bit of that while we chat some more.
You know, I had another student, and maybe you know her, Jamie Ilford. And at one of the Tarot retreats, Jamie Ilford, she's written actually some books that go with some decks, and she's written some books of her own. And she's a wonderful writer. She actually helped to edit my book here.
Wait a minute. I think I do know her.
Yeah.
I do know her. I do.
So what she put together, I remember she did this great presentation where she was using wine as sort of like an assisting element with the tarot reading and bringing more consciousness to the spirit in that bottle. So yeah, that was a cool thing that she did. Yeah. So, okay. So folks out there, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to go back to my tea.
What kind of tea are you drinking? Tell everyone. We have a lot of people from the UK here. So,
well, this comes from South America, yerba mate.
Yerba mate is one of my favorites.
And I don't do it like super duper strong, but I really like the flavor. And then I add, I'm a lightweight. I add, like a soy or an almond milk to it. Yeah.
Okay. So I asked you this before. Okay. But I do want people to know that at one time on your property, you had, I call it the magical yurt.
So basically I called it my Tarot temple.
Yes.
And so there was a point in time where, and this is the real thing that was going on in the background. So I had an office in my other house, and I had so many books in my office. This is the same office where I recorded the classes for the professional tarot consulting course, that the floor started like beginning to sink a little bit. And I went, that's not good. So I thought, I've got the yurt, and I like to go out there and just sort of hang out and meditate or spend the night or whatever. It's remote. It's on the back of the property. So I thought, I'm going to make that Tarot temple. So I brought in some shelving, and I put the books out there. And then I actually converted, I had a china cabinet, and I converted it to my deck cabinet. And it was really nice, having that back there for a while. But now I've moved into my other residence, and I've turned the whole living room into my office. So I've got here, I don't know if you can see it. I'll just turn the computer around a little bit. But the whole corner now is my library. And I'm just now putting all the books back in there.
Oh my word, you
See,
guys.
yeah. Anyway, there's about 5 of those bookshelves. It's fantastic. So I'm very happy with that.
I could just go sit there and drink yerba mate and read cards all day. That would be
Very
fun.
easily. Oh, and then the cards. So there's a built-in hutch, and I put in extra shelves, and I put all of the tarot decks in alphabetically by the deck, not the writer or the
Mhm,
artist. So,
mhm.
and then by size. And there's a photograph of that on my Facebook page. So if we're Facebook friends, or if you'd like to be Facebook friends, basically you look for Katrina Wynne, the way it's spelled on the screen here. And my icon or avatar, whatever you like to call it, is a red rose with a blue
Yeah,
background. So you're not going to see
yeah. I'm
this.
sure one of my mods will find it and link it. I'm sure
Oh,
in the chat so people can find it.
yeah.
So you also did in the before times before COVID, you did a tarot retreat.
Yeah, so that one's up at Brighton Bush Hot Springs, which is a really amazing sacred retreat center in Eastern Oregon. And it's this year, we're still trying to arrange for it, but with the huge fires that we had last year, it actually came in and destroyed some of the buildings there.
Mm,
But I kind of working with them because my people are used to things like camping out. I said, look, we can just bring our own tents and we just love being there. And of course the hot springs are fine. And that's,
yeah.
we're there for the hot springs. And I want to share this too. So my deceased husband, in fact, his birthday was a couple of days ago, and March 31st. So he's Native American, and he grew up, and his people were from this area, Kalapuya, and he was an enrolled member of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde. And he told me how the medicine people in this area, even though might have been from different tribes, would all meet at Brighton Bush Hot Springs, which of course it wasn't called Brighton Bush then. It was a sacred site. They would leave their differences and their weapons behind. And it was a place of renewing and healing and just being together and maybe sharing some of their special knowledge. So that's the way I feel about Brighton Bush and why I really love having the retreat there, because it has that spirit and it has that energy. It's very, very beautiful, cleansing, renewing energy.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Tell me about, did you use tarot in when you were seeing patients for
Ah,
counseling? Did you
okay.
use tarot then?
Yeah, so that's a popular question. And I even wrote about that on my I have several articles on my website, which is tarotcounseling.org, O-R-G.
Just linked
And
below.
counseling in the US is spelled with the one L.
Mm-hmm.
So, for one thing, I do not call the people I work with patients, I call them clients.
Thank
And and basically for me, and this is a great question, and different people do it differently. But keep in mind, I live in a little bitty community. I live out in the woods. And so it was very important for me, since I was one of the few options for people to see a counselor. In other words, I didn't have a lot of choices. I thought better to keep my tarot work separate from my counseling work, so that
you.
if they came to see me for counseling, they wouldn't have any weird reservations or feel, if they came with some prejudgments of some sort or another. And I could
Mm-hmm.
keep that really clean and clear. Now, there's some people in the community, because I didn't hide it, I just didn't promote it, that knew about my tarot work. So if they came to me for counseling, basically I'd say, well, let's do counseling, because that was the primary purpose of the appointment and why you came here. But in the back of my mind, because I've been studying it now for 50 years, I can't help but think about the tarot knowledge that I know, and I can still apply it without pulling out the cards, you see.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for instance, so I get
It's like
somebody's
being
birthday,
bilingual.
I can do their numerology. Yes, I'm bilingual. So
Mm-hmm.
I can, or trilingual even, anyway. So I can do their numerology around their birth date and already have a sense of what their life purpose and challenges are. That can be really useful. Now, on the other hand, now this is also important. This is the flip side. So somebody comes in for a tarot reading, even though I'm a counselor, am I going to slip into counseling? No, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not. Because again, their primary purpose for coming in was for a tarot reading. But it doesn't mean I won't bring counseling skills in, but I'll get their permission first. I'll say, do you mind if I put my counseling hat on for a moment? Because there's something I'd like to explore with you. And so to me, it's very much about having clean and clear boundaries, respecting your client's boundaries, not imposing my thoughts on the situation. But there have been a few situations where someone came in for a counseling client, knew I did Turo, and wanted to switch it to a Turo session. I have allowed that to happen. It's
Okay.
like, I can, but the thing is with my counseling clients, they get a sliding scale because there's a lot of low income people in the area.
Mm-hmm.
My Turo readings are a set price.
Mm.
So, it's like, well, as long as you're going with the set price, again, everybody, we got to be above board. We got to tell people, what our guidelines are ahead of time.
Yeah.
In fact, that's one of the things I teach my students, right? Go put
Yes,
in
you do.
your ethics,
Yes, you do.
ethics statement, what you're available for, what you're not available for, your prices, what amount of time you work, because those are all those healthy boundaries and parameters that create a safe space so that then when the client comes, and this is what we learn in counseling, when the client comes, if you create a really safe space and boundary for them, then more things can open up and come through. Yeah.
Mm.
And
Do
by the
you?
way, Jill, you may have forgotten this, but you're always welcome to repeat the course, and anybody can
Oh,
review it again if they want to, and you just contact me. I just have this little bitty renewal fee because it helps me pay for all the things I have to do for the study group. So basically, you'd be
that
coming back to the study group again.
that would be. Oh, wow. That's really good to know.
Yeah.
So this is what, so now we're almost at a half an hour. So what I want to do is to ask you what's coming up. What do you have coming up class wise? What are you doing? Where are you going to be,
Okay.
for the next little while here?
Yeah. Well, you might know this, and some folks might know this. I used to have an annual Turo tour that I would do, and I'd go out and I'd teach at meetup groups, or I'd teach at Turo conferences. In fact, if you go, I have a web blog, and I think I have it listed here on my business card, so I'll just show it to people. And it's also on your links, but it's called mysacredjourney.org.
Mm-hmm.
That's my web blog. And if you
Yep,
look at
that's
2019, you'll
linked
see
as
it.
well.
Excuse me?
I said that's linked down below as well.
Yes, and there's a 3-part series, as well as some other things about all these amazing Turo tours I've done. And how, for instance, Mary Greer and I went to northern Italy in October 2019 and had our own fun exploration looking at the roots of the Turo cards, and I have some great photographs in there. But anyway, so that kind of wrapped up my 10-year commitment to do traveling and Turo tours, and I knew I was going to be staying home in 2020. So what I've done is now my focus is really on things I was already doing, like online classes. And then last year in 2020, again, I got guidance from Creator, and I was told to do this free Turo series, which was called Turo Mentors Live on Zoom. And it was fantastic. It was about this time of year. And I had 2 sessions every Saturday for 10 weeks. And each session was with a different teacher from around the world. And so then this winter Creator says, okay, I want you to do this again. But I was told to start an online meetup group, because, meetup groups are usually when you meet with people in your community
Person,
around a shared
yeah.
topic. Right. But now with the COVID stuff, which is such a beautiful gift, that they've expanded it to online options too. So now I can teach all these things online. I'm so excited about it. And I started my own meetup group. And I'll give you the short title for it. It's Global Meetup Circle. The
Okay.
longer title is Katrina's Turo and Oracle Global Meetup Circle. And what's going on there is fantastic, Jill. So I've brought a lot of the Turo mentors back in. I'm bringing in some new ones. And so each month, the 4th Saturday in the US, of course, if you're in Australia, that's going to be Sunday. But the 4th Saturday, we bring in a guest teacher. Now they're going to get, I'm charging a fee so that they get paid for what they do. But we're just bringing the best. It's been so fantastic. I love every presentation because there's so many wonderful people. And I just love drawing from our amazing community and sharing all these people I've met over these years with the world.
Okay, so that is not linked below. Where do I get information about that so that I can post it in my group and like
Okay.
on your website?
So basically, if you go to the meetup.com page,
Okay.
they're going to want you to join.
Yeah.
And when you join, you can do a search.
Mm-hmm.
And then the search will be for Katrinas, Turo, and Oracle Global Meetup Circle. But you can just put in Katrina, or you can put in Global Meetup Circle, and it'll probably show up.
Okay.
And it says I'm in Portland, Oregon, but I'm not. I had to give them a city. I mean, they wouldn't accept, out in the woods. So, hey, all right, you city people, I'll give you a city name you can relate to.
All right.
But
I
it's
wanted to thank you.
Oh, wait, there's another thing that's going on there too.
Thank you, Chris Kelly, for putting Katrina's Facebook page link in. Emily's Tarot Magic says that she would like to drink tea, not tea with me, wine with me. You may, anytime. Jonathan Daly, who is everybody in the chat is a wonderful person. Jonathan's a very good friend of mine. He lives in Maui, and he said, I think Katrina might be the teacher I've been waiting for. She's amazing.
Oh my God. Hey, Jonathan, guess what? I was just on the Big Island like 2 weeks ago, and a year ago I was in Maui. So there might be more connections going on there. Keep in touch with me.
The Artistry of Tarot, Mendy says that I do have the link to the meetup group in the description. I tried to be thorough. Oh my word. So okay, so you're doing that. And
there's another thing going on there too, Jill, which I'm like super duper excited about, because I haven't offered this since I was doing the live classes back before I started the online program, which is my favorite part of it is supervision. I even include that, as part of the online program, right? This one here.
I was supervised.
Yes. And then I do even more, a lot. I do like 4 times more supervision in the level 2. But what I do now is I do a 2-hour supervision group. I do it on Zoom, but I schedule it through the Meetup group. And what happens is that anybody can join. You just need at least a little bit of experience with Tarot. I'm not there to teach Tarot. I'm there to supervise your reading skills. But each time, it's the second Saturday of each month, again, Sunday in Australia. And so we got the second Saturday and the fourth Saturday is completely filled for the entire year. And what happens is students can do a drop-in like per class, or they can sign up for a series and get a discount. And what we do is the students decide what the topics are. And I do a topic for about 40 minutes, a special topic that they're really interested in, whether it's a skill, it can be anything. And then they get to go into the little individual rooms and practice with each other, and then come back and ask more questions and answers and share with each other. So it's very dynamic, very much designed to help people move to the next level of their experience with some professional supervision.
This is why you're my teacher. It's incredible. I've loved this time of just talking, and I hope that you'll come back so that we can talk again. I would love to have you on again. What I'd like to do, though, you have been gracious enough to bring a spread for us, but it's a little bit different. So I'm going to have you explain how we're going to roll here tonight, because it's a little bit different, guys, but you're still going to be able to work with us through this, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm not displaying something because it's just, the layout is so simple that you don't need a display. But the process of it is not simple. So it's not like a recipe. My readings are not cookie cutter recipe book kind of spreads. Gee, do this spread. This means this, that means that. No, they're placeholders, but it has a lot to do with how to move between the cards and noticing the relationship between the cards and the querent. and whatever guidance is coming through the reader as well. And if you
Okay.
want to learn more about it, besides me writing about it somewhat in the book, I didn't focus on it, but I used it in my examples, my sample readings. This one here called Turo Magic and Transformation, which is on the Global Spiritual Studies website that you linked. So this one right here that says, oops, Tarot Magic Transformation. I go into much more detail about this 4-card reading. It's like most people go, 4-card reading, what's the big deal? There's layers and layers of understanding in there in terms of the process that Jung talks about in the individuation process, and also the process that Eric Rigardet talks about in terms of magical transformation. But again, remember, we're talking about from the inside out. So it's a 4-card reading. Just think of it as you have your top card, you have your 2 side cards, and then you've got your bottom card.
Okay. Do we need a querent?
You know, if I could interact with them, if they could see the card and talk to me, that would work. If not, I can either work with you or work with myself. I can do a reading for myself, whichever.
I can't come up with a question like off the top of my head. So how about if you do a reading
Guess
for
what?
yourself?
That's another article I have on my website, which was absolutely inspired by Wald Amberstone of the Turo School in New York and Reader Studio, who I love and adore, him and Ruth Ann. And, you know, because there's this assumption that every tarot reading has to start with a question. And I would disagree with that. We don't need a question, because guess what? In my world, we're looking for guidance. We're not looking for answers. We're looking for guidance. It's a process. It's an unfolding. It's an exploration. It's a journey.
All right.
So
Well, why don't you do this for you, and then we'll kind of follow along if we can.
Okay.
How's that?
All right. Let's do that. So these are my go-to deck, by the way. I love all decks for the most part. Maybe there's a few I'm not crazy about, but
what's your go-to? Right? What's your go-to deck?
Is the Voyager Tarot. I have the original large format deck. Cool. They're all collages, photographic collages.
Nice.
By James Wanless. And also, here's another thing I do. Again, this is a very spiritual practice. If people, maybe you already do something like this, but I usually create some ritual around the winter solstice, and I pick my card for the year. And so before I shuffle it back in, I want to show you my card for the year.
Okay, you're going to have to tell me because I have a vision issue. What is it?
Well, what do you see?
I don't see a lot because my vision's horrible, Katrina. So I don't know. What do people? I do. I see red. Lots of red.
Oh, there you go. It's red. And what comes up for you when you see that red?
Either a heart or an apple.
All right. So if it's a heart or an apple, can kind of make up a little story about that heart or that apple.
Oh, me. So for the card of the year?
No, just for you right now, when you're looking at this card. What a heart? Say something about hearts.
Well, I'm working on not wearing my heart on my sleeve. I'm working on not so much controlling my emotions, but more working through them and not working through them. Working through them from the inside, working through them from the inside. I am absolutely an external processor. So I like to talk things out, but I'm working on a more quiet way to work those things out. Like perhaps I journal a lot or meditation. So I'm definitely working on those kinds of skills.
That is so beautiful, Jill, because that's so in line with what the card is. But what I want you to note, and this is for everybody, what happens with us human beings is our mind wants to figure things out. The brain wants to be right. And why does it want to be right? And why does it want to figure things out? Because it's there to protect us. And our mind says to us, hey, Don't do that thing. It's scary. You got hurt, or somebody in your family got hurt, or your ancestors got hurt when they did something like that. So you have to be right and you have to know what's going on. So always go for the definition first, which means we've lost touch with the real human ability and the real spiritual ability to be what you're talking about, Jill, to just be in our feelings, right?
Mhm.
We've gone into our heads. We think we had to figure everything out. We have to know what the name of that thing is. We got to know, is it a rose or an apple? Somehow one's right and the other one's wrong. But in my world, I approach things a little differently. And I'm
Yes,
thinking there might be some other folks who feel this way as well, where
I think
let's have an
a lot of
experience,
folks in
the
the chat.
sensation, the feeling about it.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
so thank you for being the example in that moment. And now I'll tell you what the card is. And
Okay.
now you grasp that you intuitively, yourself as the querent, intuitively picked up the energy of the card because it's the Ace of Cups.
Oh,
And in this case, if I were to add a little bit to what you said, I'd say it's very much about trusting your heart. It's
mhm,
very much about being in tuned with it.
mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I think okay, so if I'm going to take that a little bit farther, it's trusting my heart and it's trusting my gut too. You know, how
absolutely.
many
Because they're
times does
connected.
our yeah, they are. And how many times does our gut tell us something and we discount that because it's not logical? Because our brain says, no, that can't be like that. That's not what that is. And it really, so to trust our gut is so, to trust my gut, learning to trust my gut is important.
And so then for those of us who are readers, it's not only about trusting our gut in the process of the reading, but it's also
Mm-hmm.
creating the space and allowing the client to trust their gut
Your gut.
first.
Yep.
Yes. And again, this is something I learned from Jung, in a sense, in my dream work studies, because think of it this way. Let's say you were sleeping and you woke up and you had a dream. Now, if you wanted to re-access that dream, are you going to get up and have a cup of coffee and then turn on your computer or turn on your phone and start your day?
No.
No, you need to lie in that different wavelength, basically, in that part of your brain awareness, because that's where the dream came from in the first place. It came from a whole different wavelength. There's a whole study about this, and I've got an article about it. But you're in a more relaxed place in your mind, and that's where the dream realm is. So if we want to re-access information from other dimensions, we need to meet it in its dimension. The moment we
Mm-hmm.
come out and we try to define things, we're in another part of the brain, you see, and we've lost that little opportunity. So that's why the very first homework assignment in my program, the level 1, is I have people do well, it's kind of like dream journaling, but it's Turo journaling, using things I do in dream journaling, where what was your first impression of that dream? Not was what analyzing it, saying, well, what was it saying? And, no, what was your first impression and what was difficult and what was easy? And then noticing that dynamic that's building up between what's difficult and what's easy. And that's what we're going to be doing in the tarot reading that I'm showing you. Okay.
Listen, yes, but I just want to say this, that exercise for me was very difficult because I am in my head all the time. I'm very swordsy. And I am in my head all the time. So for somebody to say, here, look at this card, I have to tell you, like you saying, what do you see in this card? What do you feel? My whole being just went, you know?
And you're not alone, Jill. I tell you, I think I lose half my students the first week sometimes in terms of their trust in me, because I'll say, can we go back? I think you skipped over a step, and let's give that another try. And I kind of like pushing them along, and then eventually they get it. Once we get into week number 6 and we're doing the dream work, they're like,
Mhm.
oh,
Now I get
connecting
it.
those dots. I'm using dream work and tarot cards, and each one is a snapshot of a dream in that moment. And I'm
Yes.
tapping into the energy of life in that moment. And I'm not focused on the past, and I'm not projecting into the future.
I think
That's where
Jonathan
the
David
real
is
magic
ruling
is.
at this point. All right.
Thank you,
What
everybody,
do
for
we
your comments. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I can't see them, but every now and
I
then one will
can.
pop up. All right, so I'm
All
shuffling
right.
my cards. And I want to warn everybody ahead of time in terms of time and boundaries. I asked Jill if there was a time limit, and she said no. I'm going to hold her to that. But I actually process things maybe a little quicker than some people because it's just a style I'm used to. And typically, if I'm doing a reading for myself, I do a 1-card reading, but I go through all 4 stages in that 1 card. But I
Okay.
realize for reading for clients, they really need those 4 cards. So that's what I'm going to be demonstrating for you today is the 4 cards.
Okay. And
And
we can play along at home too.
yeah. And then
Okay.
typically when I check, for most of us, when we're doing readings, we each have our own rituals. Ritual includes maybe what you're wearing or the colors around you, or if you have tea or wine, or, what deck you're using,
Handle.
candles, etc., all those things.
Mhm.
So, just keep in mind what your ritual is. You may have your own ritual for how to cut the cards or shuffle them, or how your client selects that card. My ritual when I'm reading for myself is I use energy, but there's not time for that right now. That would take way too long because I really feel the cards and notice which one's kind of connecting with me. So what I'm
Okay.
going to do, Jill, let's pretend for a moment that you and I are working together, even though I'm doing a reading for myself.
Okay.
So I'm going to have you tell me where to cut the deck. You ready?
Yep.
Okay.
Go.
Right,
Right there.
here, right
Yep.
there,
Yep.
or go back.
Nope. There's fine.
All right.
Where you
Got
are
it.
now.
All right. So I just cut the cards. We all know what that means, right? And then I'm just going to go with the top 4 cards. So this is
Okay.
my, and by the way, are you familiar, folks, with the Turo School? They have a newsletter that comes out the first of each month called Turo Tips. And a few years back, I actually wrote an article in there about my tarot journaling process. So you can do a search, go back to the Turo Tips, and you can find that. And I'm going to be following that process, at least the 3 of the steps. The 4th step is more like once you've repeated it a few times, then you can add the 4th step. But the first
Okay.
step is basically has to do with what is my first impression of the card. And by the way, I just remembered something. I hope you don't mind me running off the mouth here. But to prepare for this program, I went to Amazon because I wanted to use the image they had of my card to promote it on Facebook. And you know how they show you the reviews? And I like reading the reviews to see what people are saying and what they liked about it or what they didn't like about it. And I was reading the least favorable review, and the person said things like, "Oh, it's a technique. Anybody can use it. She just wants to know what your first impression is." And then, oh, what was the other thing? And they didn't identify themselves. And she just answers your question or something like that. And I go, yeah, there's a lot more to it than that, but that's all right. Maybe they didn't read the whole book. I don't know. But so I want you to know there's a lot more to it. And so I didn't even start off with a question. I'm just open to whatever guidance wants to come through. And then I have
Okay.
all the cards face down. I'm not looking at them because here's the key. It's like waking up from that dream. When I turn the card over, I'm going to notice what I notice about it. I have no idea what's going to come up. I'm not going to search for an interpretation of the card. I'm going to be aligning with and allowing an experience of the card. And that's the key difference here. Okay. And
Okay.
then now the next step is after I've had an experience of it, and this goes back to process work, psychology with Arnold and Amy Mandel, is when I notice the flirt, the thing that's flirting with my attention, I talk about this in my book, then I can amplify that and bring it more to life. And I'm telling you this now, so as I'm doing it, you'll know what I'm doing. So when I amplify it, then it becomes more real, which is exactly what we just did with Jill, right? She saw the rose and then she related to some things she's working on and some awarenesses that she's exploring and expanding. So it'll just be my personal association with it, just like you're sitting here with Jung and you're doing a mandala and you're exploring your personal relationship with it. So there's a lot more to this. And then after that, the very last step is I might add some card knowledge. I'll go, okay, let's put my interpretation, not my interpretation, but impression of the card with now a little bit more of an interpretation based on my knowledge of the card. Let's just put it that way. And then I'll see, where do these two blend or complement each other in some way or another. Now, keep in mind, I have like over 600 books over here on Turo and metaphysics, which tells you that there is never one absolute definition for each card. That's my opinion anyway. And if you have a go-to, fine, that works for you, great. For me, I like the idea of having a tool belt so that I have the flexibility of understanding not only the essence behind the card, and that's what I'm writing about in my next book, is the essence of the card. And then I can understand how that essence is manifested in life in a certain direction or another. And if you want to learn a little bit more about that, again, I have some really great articles on my weblog. Specifically, look for the articles I did about Oprah and Trump and the Emperor card. Then you'll understand how two people can have the same life card, but the way they live out the essence of it can be very different. Okay. All right. I'm going to have a little tea before I do this.
Okay. I'm going to have a little bit of water.
All right. I'm just going to keep moving through this, and I'll show you all the cards.
Oh, I love when it starts like this.
So the first thing I noticed was this face, the light side of the face. The other side is dark, but it's very bright, like the light is on it, almost like a spotlight is on it. And then I noticed this kind of like a sunrise and a firefall all at the same time. The sunrise is over like New York City and the original Twin Towers. But then the firefall reminds, well, now that I look at it, it looks more like a fountain, but I'm going to go with my first impression. And this is really important because remember, the mind's going to want to make sense out of it and define it. But every time my mind wants to do that, I'm going to relax it. And I go, to me, it's a firefall. I don't care what it actually is. It's a firefall. And the firefall reminds me of the first time I went to the Big Island, Hawaii, and I was watching the lava flow over a cliff into the ocean. And it was literally, instead of a waterfall, a firefall. And so there's something about the light on this person's face and the sun. Well, technically it would be a sunrise in New York and the firefall. And if I put all three of those together, first it's the face, and the face looks very serene. And the firefall, well, okay, I'm going to say what this is to me. It feels like a sunset more than a sunrise. Logically, it looks like a sunrise. It reminds me of my recent trip to the Big Island, Hawaii, and the things I associate with that island and why I was there and the people who I really care about who are there, one in particular. And there's something about something being really peaceful and dynamic all at the same time. And so then I had to go, okay, well, how am I kind of peaceful and dynamic? And I go, yeah, I am peaceful and dynamic because I live a very quiet life. I live by myself out in the woods, and it's very quiet here most of the time. And yeah, I also have a very dynamic life, especially if I'm online or I'm working with students or clients or things like that, or I'm talking about something I'm passionate about. So I too kind of have this really interesting combination between being very peaceful, having a nice grounded spiritual life, and then being out there. All right, so I'm going to show you the card so you can see what I've been looking at. And then you'll probably notice which card it is, and then I'll talk about that.
Okay.
So what I was noticing was this face here, the firefall, and then this, I wasn't really tuned to the city so much as I was tuned to the sun, and like this sunrise or this sunset really didn't matter. So this
reminds me of
Pele. Of what does it remind you of?
Pele, the goddess of fire from the Big Island.
Oh, right. Absolutely. Yes, I definitely left her an offering. She's very special. So remember the card I was just talking about, the article I wrote? It's the Emperor card. That's why I cracked up,
Oh.
because there's something about the essence of the Emperor. in the Turo world, if you just across the board, I'm going to say probably somewhere between 50 to 75% of Turo people go, ooh, Emperor, I don't like him, right? Because they're just talking about the historical associations with that role and how certain people have embodied that role and misused their power, right?
Mm.
Or you can think of it as the daddy in the Turo. And again, it can go back to people's personal histories and the negative daddy energy and things like that. But what I like to teach people, and definitely what I'm writing about in my next book, is going back to the essence. And to me, the essence of the emperor, now I'm adding some description to my impression and seeing how the two come together. As I go, well, the emperor to me is very much about being aware of one's boundaries and having hopefully more permeable boundaries. In other words, not really stuck hard boundaries that you can't move beyond, but really, really open ones that are just not, defined enough. So there's something about being defined and being really flexible all at the same time. And I do believe that's a lot about who I am. And this is the subject of the reading because it's the first card. So it's kind of giving us an overview of what part of my life I'm exploring in this reading. And I particularly associated it with the Big Island on Hawaii, which I'm fascinated with the fact that that island is just pure lava.
Yeah.
Dirt gets imported, and all these plants are growing in the lava and in that little bit of dirt or whatever's on the surface. It's just a lava rock. It's just, I really didn't quite realize that before. I know it very well
It's a
now. I saw the
pretty
whole island.
amazing place.
Yes. And so now how does that relate? Yeah, so with Hawaii, I'm also exploring, like, is that a place where I might want to live part-time or something? And in terms of my boundaries about where I live and where I want to be in the world, and real physical presence. So
Oh,
that's
she's coming your way, Jonathan. She's coming your way.
there's a very good chance, at least part-time. All right. So now let's look at my next card. So the
Okay.
next card, remember I said there's one card on top, and then there's these two side-by-side cards.
Mhm.
The two side-by-side cards are basically the known, which is card number 2, and the unknown, which is card number 3. Now,
Okay.
somebody came to one of my classes one time and completely misinterpreted and misunderstood what I was trying to say about that, and even put it into their book and didn't make any reference to me. So I just want everybody to know, if you see that layout and one thing says, let's say conscious, and the other one says unconscious, it's really about what do I know in this moment? And this goes back to Jung. I actually I was so honored and pleased to do a presentation at Reader Studio when they did the Turo and Psychology day on Thursday. And I did one on basically Jung and Turo, and specifically looking at kind of see, I don't want to talk about the whole thing, but basically I wanted to help Tarot people understand the Tarot really very clearly through Jung's understanding. So for instance, when we use the word psychic, he had a very different understanding of it. And that's the one I want to go to right now. And that's why I'm bringing this up. And so from Jung's point of view, what we're aware of is what we've experienced so far in our life. It's our personal consciousness. But the psyche includes everything. And the symbol I used for that was an iceberg. And so above the surface, you see just this little piece, but you know that below the surface, there's this huge collective unconscious and also your personal unconscious. And so the unknown is the part of the unconscious material that wants to come to the surface and be aware in that moment. That to me is the unknown. It doesn't mean it's the unknown that I need an answer to, or the unknown that's going to tell me what to do next. It's more like, hey, creator, what is it you want me to incorporate into my individuation process right now? What's the next step for my awareness? And so then the known's going to tell us something you already know in that area. And then the unknown is going to go into the next area of exploration for you, or something that wants to have a relationship with the known. So there's this very important, I like to use an infinity symbol, very important dance of duality, as I call it, between the second and the third card, because there might be a tug of war there. They may be in disagreement. They may not like each other. There might be a huge contrast. Or they could be in harmony with each other and be really easy to see it, but then you still need to take it back into your life and go, okay, now how can I live this? How can I expand into this? And so there's a lot more going on than just, well, here's this interpretation and that there's that interpretation. So I'm going to go into the known card now, and I'm going to get my first impression. I don't know what's going to be. And here, I've been using these cards since they came out in the mid 80s, and I still see new things all the time. It's amazing. And I love seeing it through my client's eyes too. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Okay, so if you were sitting across from me and I was your client, I went, oh, wow. And I went, oh, wow. What would be your impression of me as the reader?
I'd be thinking that you're surprised, but not necessarily in a good way.
Yeah, so you would put maybe a value judgment about good or
I
bad.
would.
Okay.
The way you said it, it wasn't, oh, wow. It was, oh, wow.
Well, what I'm doing is like, this is powerful. This is the kind of thing that's so powerful. You get down on your knees and you just, whoa. So it's not good or bad. It's just powerful.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's like, whoa. And it looks like this. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to really feel it. It's like, but it's actually pointed away from you. But since I'm the one that's looking at it, it looks like this. It's pointing away from me.
Mm-hmm.
It's this hand. And it's the one that just says, I stand for something. See, I'm amplifying it now. It's the one that says, I stand for something. And I feel solid about it. And I feel passionate about it. And it's deep. And it's divine. It has divine guidance behind it. It is my sole purpose. And no matter how scary it gets sometimes, or how many people may not like this about me, this is solid. Wow. Oh, and I hadn't even noticed what the name of the card was. I was so intrigued with this image. And so now when I tell you what the card is and you see it, you'll go, oh, wow. You'll get blown away too. But first I'll show you the card, and I won't tell you which one it is. There you go. So I went I went deeply into this, almost like it was a black hole. I really got a sense it was a black hole, the sacred feminine, like a portal to another dimension.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just noticed I kind of had a sense of this. It's the Four of Wands.
Wow.
So we went from the Emperor card, which is a major arcana card. And those of us who study Turo, hey, if a major arcana card comes up, this is big. This is just not about your day-to-day life. This is huge. And so then I get a reflection that confirms that, but it's the Wands. And for me, the Four of Wands is very much about my spirituality, my energy, essence, my practice in the world, my spiritual practice in the world, and all the things I'm so passionate about that I want to bring into the things I'm writing about these days. And so I'm loving this.
Huh? The wands are the fire, so that ties it into the Emperor, and the Four Wands kind of, a lot of times we see it as kind of boundaries.
Right. But keep in mind, my impression with the Emperor was about re-examining the boundaries and making them more permeable. Like maybe I don't have to just stay in this location on the earth all the time. Maybe I can bilocate physically or, energetically. And then the Four of Wands says, oh, yeah, that's what you're working on. You see? So I get this confirmation about things I already picked up in the subject. But then the unknown is the next card. But before I go to that, let me see. I think there's one more thing. And I love the fact that you brought up that, yes, indeed, at least in this deck, the Wands is associated with fire. And that's the firefall.
Yeah.
And so we start making these symbolic connections. I had the firefall here. And then this is the fire element. It says, I want you to focus on the fire part of this card. You see, it's already sending me in a certain direction. So exciting. It's like my fire, my passion, and the fire, the lava of Hawaii. And actually where I live, believe it or not, I did a lot of, I went to a geology training, and I had already had an intuitive sense of this. And it was so cool to see all the scientific information that backed up my hunch that I indeed live in an area that used to be a volcanic island. But over time, it got pushed towards Idaho,
Land.
basically.
Yeah.
And it also got pushed north towards Canada. And so what used to be a volcanic island in the ocean is now the Oregon coastline,
Oh,
where I live anyway. So it's
wow.
amazing. It has an island energy. So I've been on an island, but it's been on the mainland. Okay. So now this next card is going to be the unknown, the thing I don't know, I'm not as aware of. Maybe I need to embrace it more clearly. Maybe I'm skirting around it or avoiding it. I don't know. But when I turn it over, it'll probably tell me. It'll show me, or I'll experience it in some way.
The cards, they don't lie.
You see, this is the only time in my whole life I've actually demonstrated this 4-card reading in public. And the reason I haven't demonstrated it, because I didn't want people to get the idea that this means this every time. It doesn't. It's so fluid. It depends on the person and the cards and the impressions and the story that develops. So it's more of an art. I really see it as an art. And that's why my book is called The High Art of Reading. Okay. So, oh my gosh. This touches me so deeply. Right here, my heart. In fact, actually, I got this in Hawaii. This is from Hawaii, and this is from the Glastonbury and the Chalice Well, the Sacred Feminine. So I kind of like have these symbols with me right now, Hawaii and the Sacred Feminine. And I see this card. I said,
Sandra, are you still awake? Sandra is a person who's in the chat, and Glastonbury is her favorite place to be.
Oh, beautiful. Well, let me show her something I got while I was there. It's on my window. You can't, I don't know if you can see it. You can't see it. When you have the light behind it, it's the chalice goddess. The chalice well goddess.
Wonderful.
But and there, and you see at the bottom, that's the actual cover for the chalice well.
Oh yeah. Oh, I see it.
And that's where I got this. And I have that on my window, so I get to see it every day. It's so sacred for me. And that's that sacred feminine, which is that power.
Yes.
So now this next card is saying,
we all need to move to Hawaii, and I agree.
Okay.
Together. Pick up the yurt. Let's go.
Yeah, just pick up the yurt. That would be nice. No. Anyway, well, I gotta have some place to come back to. So this next card is really the next step. I see this is my next step for me. And it's purification by fire. It's being the fire. It's not just studying the fire or going to this fire. It's being the fire. And I'll show this to you.
Oh, wow. That's like, yeah.
Yeah, it's the seer, the sage of wands, which would be the king of wands.
Yeah.
And so it's very much about coming into my power, my eldership in the spirit realm. And I mean, this reading is very powerful. I'm really blown away. But I went back like this because I kind of sunk into the inner experience of it and the knowing of it and the being of it. So definitely where I'm at in my progress in my life right now, being an elder and a crone. So then the last card, the fourth card, so remember it's the top one, the two side ones, and then the one at the bottom. The one at the bottom, I think of that as either the possible outcome. In other words, if you're able to work through and I want to put these side by side so you know what I mean by work through. I did it ever so quickly. But do you see how this one has more of that masculine 4 energy? It's very vertical, very phallic, if you want to think of it this way. This one has more mixture and fluidity in it. The fires, dancing, and then this beautiful face here. And of course, the person who's kind of meditating. So they have I'm so aligned with this. I really didn't have a struggle with it. But if I had a struggle with it, I'd spend a lot more time on these two going back and forth. And so the next one is going to say, well, this is the possible outcome if you're able to embrace that unknown that came through. And if you're able to complete it, this might even be the next step for you. So
Okay.
I'll turn this one on.
Is it a volcano? Are you going to Hawaii?
It's an experiential thing. It's probably the most beautiful card next to the Ace of Cups in the entire deck.
Oh.
And it's the sacred feminine. And it has a lot of Hawaiian influence, I must say. It's so, so beautiful. And I think for, I can speak to the women and us being in touch with our own inner sacred feminine, but also know the men, or if you're male identified, it doesn't matter what your gender is, right? When I say this, I'm really talking about your essence, your masculine essence, your feminine essence. So a person who might be in a male body or male identified body can still have a feminine essence. And this to me is the quintessential feminine essence card of the Tarot deck, is the Woman of Cups.
It's beautiful.
And when I was there was an outdoor shower, and right now there's night blooming jasmine. And it's just really about being there and those blessings and being with the aloha spirit. And it's titled Rejoicer.
Letting that, you are coming into your own, and letting that embody you inside and out.
Yes.
Just
and then now remember what my card was for the year, the Ace of Cups. It was very much about really welcoming and being the overflow of love. And to me, this is the embodiment of that.
Beautiful.
And so isn't it interesting? Now, if we go back and analyze the reading, we started off with a very masculine card, which was the subject of the reading in a sense, even though that wasn't my relationship to it so much, but it was looking maybe at more the masculine side of myself that needs to re-examine, the flow and my boundaries, right? How fluid can I be, but also retain some sense of form. But then I end with this very feminine, the ultra feminine, the Queen of Cups, the Woman of Cups. Yes. So we have 2 dimensions here. We have a vertical dimension and a horizontal dimension that goes into the reading. Let's see if I can back that. Yeah. And so sometimes you want to go back to the reading and kind of look at the story, the horizontal story, but you also want to look at the vertical story. And then if you're working with a client, of course, then you want to review the story with them or for them and reinforce it or ground it in some way. Or maybe there's something they can go back that came up out of the reading that says, hey, this is something I need to integrate into my life on a daily basis or whatever. So for me, if I were to do that to myself and take my own advice here, I would say that I need to stay on definitely my spiritual path, and keep expanding on it, expanding my sense of whatever those boundaries are, making them more permeable and open and actually more flowing, and being more identified with that feminine spirit within myself, as well as perhaps in my environment. And using those spiritual tools and plugging them into my tarot work, because that's where I'm coming from these days. And I have my favorite article I wrote last year. Was back in, I think it was August, because I was honoring the strength card in the Tarot, which is Leo for most. And I've been studying with this woman named Megan Watterson, who some of you might know because she did a beautiful oracle deck on the Divine Feminine. And she's also an amazing theological scholar. She went to Harvard, and she went to where else did she go? I'm going blank at the moment. Columbia, maybe. And she studied the history of all the feminine teachers and spiritual leaders in history, including the ones that were demonized or they try to forget about, that have suddenly shown up in gospels like Mary Magdalene
Mhm.
and such. And it's so beautiful to bring the sacred feminine back in again as a beautiful cohort to the sacred masculine within ourselves as well as in the world. So I wrote about a story I read in her book, and her book is called Mary Magdalene Revealed. I think that's what it is. I got it right there. Mary Magdalene Revealed. Yeah. And just an amazing story about the power of love and the power of kind of, I don't know how many people, I hope you don't mind me getting a little preachy here, but you know what? This
Do
card
it.
says, you go for it, girlfriend. Okay. So the Course in Miracles, I also studied the Course in Miracles with Marianne Williamson. And there's just this theme that keeps coming through about it can either be, love or fear, right?
Yeah.
And I know I choose love. And that's what you'll see in my work. That's what you'll see in my writing. And even in my readings with people, if fear shows up, I'll go, okay, how can we move through the fear and dissolve it? I'm not going to say it doesn't exist. Of course, it exists for people, but it doesn't have to be held on to. And that goes back to counseling work. And how do we help people heal and dissolve the old energy around memories and traumas and the things that the ego is trying to protect us from repeating again? So to me, the Turo is an amazing tool for healing. And I hope you can see from just my own reading how it can empower people and really reinforce things that maybe you're already doing, but more powerfully or more clearly or more focused or more relaxed.
I think that, oh my goodness, I just think that you've unlocked love and heart and a new way of looking at the tarot for all of us here today. And I really am blessed, and I think the people in the chat would say that they have been blessed by your presence here today too. And does anybody have any questions or anything that you want to ask Katrina before we go? Sandra, my friend who loves Glastonbury, reminded me that she has a tattoo of the chalice well cover on her arm.
On her arm. Okay.
Yeah. And
Beautiful.
yeah.
Any other questions? Well, so if you want to learn more about that style of reading with the 4 cards, again, I talk about it somewhat in my book. I
Mm-hmm.
definitely have a global spiritual studies recording of it, and which I think, and you have the link to that address.
I
There's also
do.
very beginning and very clear, very logical, easy to relate to lessons in there, because that's what I like to do. I want to keep it simple, even though sometimes I add a lot of information. I give lots of handouts, and I really try to be as thorough as I can on a particular topic, but make it very accessible for people. So,
You do.
yeah, and it's right, Jonathan. It was deep, and it was really meaningful for me. And I thought I was going to cry, but I didn't, because I just felt really good and aligned with it.
Thank you so much for being here today with me. I really appreciate it. We're going to have to bring you back. Thank you so much to everybody in chat with me today. You know how special you are to me.
Yes.
Look for the links below, and definitely check out Katrina. Go to her Facebook page. Let's all go to the meetup, and then let's all move to Hawaii together and bring the magic yurt.
There's a lot of people moving to Hawaii these days, I must say,
Little think.
and they're not necessarily Hawaiians either.
Mm.
And also, I have a few other Facebook pages where I just post information here and there. For those of you who are specifically aligned with tarot counseling, I actually have a private group, and you can request that I invite you. Just tarot counseling. You won't be able to find it probably. And then the other thing is I just have one for transformative tarot counseling for maybe the latest lesson that's coming up or opportunity or something like that. You can go to the weblog and sign up to receive my monthly posts that I make there. I only do one a month, because I'm a busy gal. But I love adding those posts. And actually, I have a series right now for those of you more on the psychological side, Jill. I don't know if you've seen one, but I'm actually making a connection between major arcana cards in the tarot and things like the DSM, Diagnostic Manual,
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and also other psychological or psycho-emotional kind of issues that come up for people. And
Wow.
so it's kind of like, how does the essence of this card kind of represent these issues that come up for people in their lives where they get stuck?
So cool. Thank you for being with me, and
Thank you,
thank you to
Jill.
everyone. And I'm going to say goodnight to everybody. It's late over in the UK, but I've just had such a great time here tonight. So everyone have a wonderful evening. If you're celebrating Easter, have a blessed Easter. And I will see you next week when my guest will be Kelly Burton, the artist who created the Journey of the Sacred Bee and other decks as well. And I will see you guys all next week. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
All right. Hello.